NBA players come from all over the world. The United States obviously produces the largest amount of NBA players, but players from other countries are rising quickly, and we've seen guys come in from all over the world over the years. Some of the greatest NBA players of all time have been from countries across the planet, and in honor of the upcoming NBA draft, we're looking at the best players drafted from every country. Okay, well, not every country, most of the top producing countries. But first, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Atlas VPN, who's a great VPN service that I fully support. Now, real quick, if you're unaware, Atlas VPN will do a few things for you. VPNs in general hide your virtual location and let you appear to log onto the internet from anywhere in the world. And that's useful for a couple reasons. Now, there's certain shows on streaming services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus that are only locked to certain countries. So instead of flying to the UK to watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia on Netflix, you could just have Atlas VPN reroute your connection to that country. Or if you just want to keep your connection private from bigger companies trying to get a hold of your information, VPNs make sure that your IP address stays hidden on a private server where those big companies can't get to it. But my favorite part about Atlas VPN is their data breach scanner. Using their tool, it'll run your email address to see if it ended up in any data breaches, including emails, passwords, or other sensitive information. So basically, they got your back. And now I know what you're thinking. For a service like this, it must be what, $25, $50, $100 a month? Well, actually, no. Because currently, Atlas VPN is running a huge discount on their 3-year deal for just $139 a month. That's $1.39 a month with a 30-day money-back guarantee if you're not happy with them. But the deal won't last for long, so make sure to check it out by clicking the link in my description below. Thanks to them for the sponsor, but now for the best drafted from every country. And of course, most of the all-time greats come from the US, but the best is obviously Michael Jordan. I mean, not really up for any debate, so let's move on. Canada is another top country for NBA players though, and there's actually been 39 players drafted into the league from Canada, 2 of which have been first overall picks with Andrew Wiggins and Anthony Bennett. Several current day players including Jamal Murray, Dillon Brooks, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and RJ Barrett, but none of them at least currently match up to Steve Nash, who was the best Canadian ever drafted. And Steve was actually born in South Africa, but spent most of his childhood in Canada, so that's where he held his citizenship. And when it came time for college, he sent in letters to over 30 universities in America to try and get an opportunity at the NBA through that route. And it worked. He spent 4 years in college, and throughout the years quickly became one of the greatest point guards of all time. And now Canada's creating a lot of new young NBA players. On the other hand though, a country like Japan hasn't been as fortunate, with the only NBA player they've produced being Rui Hachimura, currently on the Wizards. It took them 50 years for it to happen, but it finally has, and that might open the door for more to come. But then again, there's not many 6'8" dudes walking around Japan. But hey, years ago I probably would have said the same thing about China and them drafting players, and then there comes 7'6" Yao Ming, so anything's possible. And he's without a doubt the best player to be drafted from there. There was 8 total players to come out of China, but no one nearly as good as Yao. Yi Jianlin was probably the other most notable, and if you're thinking Jeremy Lin, he was never born in China and wasn't even drafted, so he wouldn't have counted here anyways. But while not as many players have come from Asian countries, on the other hand, Serbia is where the most international players have ever been drafted from, with 43 players having been selected to NBA teams. The highest up one has been drafted was 2nd overall, which was Darko Milicic back in 03, which kinda gives a bad first impression here, but it gets better because Peja Stojakovic, Bogdan Bogdanovic, and Vlade Divac are all also of the same nationality, but of course none are better than this year's MVP Nikola Jokic. He leads the way for Serbia here, being the best one ever picked into the league. Another pretty popular country you might not have realized is France, and the best French-born player has gotta be Dominique Wilkins, but he was of American nationality. The best actual player drafted out of France though was Tony Parker. Rudy Gobert, Joakim Noah, and Evan Fournier are other notable players, and Rudy does make a case here for this one over TP, but he's just great defensively with 3 defensive player awards. But Tony's got 5 championships and a finals MVP under his belt, so Gobert doesn't necessarily stack up and take the spot at least just yet. But with that said, France has a total of 35 players drafted into the league, which puts them with the 3rd most behind Serbia and Canada. The continent of Africa has brought us a lot of NBA talent too, and the country of Cameroon has brought us 2 current day stars in Joel Embiid and Pascal Siakam. And while Joel's the better player, both guys have very similar stories. Neither guy initially wanted or had any interest in playing basketball, but both were discovered and introduced to the game by fellow Cameroonian Luc Mbah a Moute. And after he introduced them to the game, from there they had enough size and athleticism for him to bring them to America and help them develop their games enough to make it to the league. And they're 2 of only 5 Cameroon players to ever make it. Staying in Africa, Nigeria is a little bigger, so they've had a bunch more guys make it big time. 17 of them actually, and out of those 17, they've had 2 players drafted 1st overall. The first was Michael Olowokandi, who was one of the biggest busts in NBA history, but Nigeria also produced Hakeem Olajuwon, who was one of the best 1st overall picks picks in NBA history, so it kind of evens out, which of course means he's the best player from there to be drafted. And just like Joel Embiid, Hakeem started out playing soccer until he was 15, then really got into basketball and quickly made the transition and became great. And he'd play there until he was ready to attend college. So he moved to America and joined the University of Houston, who originally didn't have any high expectations at all for him. But as we all know, he definitely proved them all wrong. Now, before Luka Doncic, you really didn't hear about Slovenian players too often, which of course means he is and, probably will forever be the best player to be drafted from that country. But there actually has been 12 total players from there, and one other one in the league currently today, which is Goran Dragic. But as for Luka, he started out in Slovenia playing basketball ever since he was 1 year old, and was a prodigy right away. At the age of 8, he was already getting moved up to play with older kids because he was way too good for everyone else his own age. And that trend has continued his entire career, with him first playing professionally at 16 and winning EuroLeague MVP at 19 years old. And within 2 years of being in the NBA at 21 years old, he was already dominating players in their primes. So he's definitely putting some respect on international players and has a chance to be one of the best international guys to ever play the game. Now, Australia's brought us some good talent to the game too. They gave us Patty Mills, who's still a great player, Dante Exum, who was supposed to be a great player. Kyrie Irving was born in Australia but mainly holds American citizenship, so he doesn't count. But it's okay because besides him, they've still brought in 2 first overall picks to the NBA, and it's pretty strange that nearly 3 of them come from Australia. But the other 2 are Andrew Bogut and Ben Simmons, making Ben the best overall player. And he actually spent a lot of time over there. He lived there until he was 16 before moving to America to attend high school and face off against better competition. And it paid off because in his home country, he was always way ahead of everyone his own age, but getting to America, he got the publicity he needed, attended LSU, and went first overall. Moving over now to Germany, every few years a player from Germany gets drafted, and the last pretty great one that's still currently in the league is Dennis Schroeder. He started playing professionally in Germany at 17 before entering the NBA draft 3 years later. But the best all-time German player is of course Dirk Nowitzki, and he also played professionally in Germany for 4 years. Before that though, he was always the best player in his town, the best player in his area, but it wasn't until he was 16 years old where his coach made him decide if he wanted to stay a local hero or be the best player in the world one day. And with him winning a league MVP, he did just that. So who knows, without that push from his coach, maybe we never see Dirk Nowitzki in the NBA, and he doesn't end up going 9th overall. But then we go over to a couple islands next, with the first being the Bahamas. And even though it's only 300 miles away from the United States, it's a completely different situation there, and only 3 NBA players have ever been drafted from there. Buddy Hield and DeAndre Ayton are the most notable, and I'd go ahead and give the spot to Ayton. I mean, Hield's definitely the more skilled player, and it was clear in the finals and this postseason at times that DeAndre is still a very young player and has a long way to go. His game's still got a lot of developing left to do, but considering how well he did play all the way up until the finals, and the fact that Hield's never been on a good team or even one with a winning record, I'll go ahead and say the spot does belong to Ayton. The other island though that we need to mention is Jamaica, and it's not too often a player comes out of Jamaica. As a matter of fact, there's only been 5 NBA players to ever do so, with the 2 most notable being Roy Hibbert and Patrick Ewing. And with players that size, it would have been hard for them not to make it. But they did, and Ewing's the most notable. And he was born in Jamaica but moved to America when he was 12, and by the time he got to high school, he had quickly become one of the best high school players in the country, even though he had only played the game for a couple of years at that point. But then we move things over to Spain and the best player to be drafted from there. Well, there's a couple notable players. The first one's surprising and the other 2 aren't. But the first that may surprise some of you is Serge Ibaka. Originally, of course, from the Congo, but early on he left there and started playing in Spain, where he first got recognized and subsequently drafted from. So he basically got drafted out of Spain, even though he's not from there or never truly lived there. And he's played all over the world to get to the NBA. He played there, in France for a bit, in the Congo, on the highest level in Africa, and then made it straight to the league. The best players to come out of Spain are the Gasol brothers, and I think you gotta give it to Pau as the better overall brother. Now, one of the biggest countries out there that we really don't hear players come from too often, and I guess it's not surprising, is Russia. Their best, of course, though, is Andrei Kirilenko, with no real other competition for him out of his home country, because I don't know and I've never heard of the other 8 guys. But Kirilenko's been out of the league for a while now, but even with his bowl cut, everyone's gotta respect his game, because he was one of those guys that had one of the most complete games where he could get you blocks, steals, rebounds, assists, and points all on any one given night, and would usually do so. Lithuania is another one that doesn't come up a ton, but it's brought us a few quality big men over the years, in Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and currently Jonas Valanciunas and Domantas Sabonis. And I'll say Sabonis is the best overall player drafted out of Lithuania. If we were just talking in general, of course his dad, Arvydas Sabonis, would take this one for how good he was internationally and all, but his NBA career didn't amount to what it should have have been. Domantas, on the other hand, is one of the most talented young guys in the game today. Then you travel over a bit to Greece, and you may be surprised to find out there's been 19 total players having been drafted by way of Greece, but only a couple you've truly probably ever heard of in Giannis and his two brothers. And now all three of them are NBA champions. And no matter what happens, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Giannis will always be the best out of Greece. And of course, with him just winning the title, I'm sure you know and have heard the story by now of how he grew up poor, so he had to sell sunglasses on the street and didn't start playing basketball till he was 14, so I'll skip over that. But what a better way to end it than on our two new NBA champions. Comment down below though who you think the best international player out of this year's draft will be, and I'll catch you next video.